Hello, hello. A number
Yes,
of
sir.
students, Gigi, number of students have joined, and inshallah, ta'ala, only for tomorrow you will have to take troubles. Otherwise, I don't want these troubles and etc. over here in the classrooms. But unfortunately, we have such type of difficulties and problems in through net and through computers and etc. Why? Because we are no more used to of them. Number one, and number two, as far as the such type of programs are concerned, then with after 30 minutes it is ended up, and again we will have to wait. Either it may be you or I, and I hope that inshallah ta'ala, Almighty Allah will help us, and we will be in the classroom next week. And tomorrow I try my level best to take your classes, one or two classes like this, and with this a great hectic type of thing. Anyway, over here, we were the point of discussion over here was that how uh, David Hume is trying his level best to maintain the standard of the test, especially to judge the work of art. So now the point over here is many of the beauties of poetry and even of eloquence are founded on falsehood and fiction. What happens in poetry? That he is of the view that in poetry we have uh, falsehood and fiction, and poetry is a mixture of both of them. Why? Because there are hyperboles, metaphors, and an abuse or perversion of terms from their natural meaning. It means that meanings are no more natural, but they are given by poets. He has simply, he has simply quoted the poetry over here. And the beauty of the poetry is certainly based upon the metaphors, hyperboles, and other type of literary terms over here which have been used to check the rules of the imagination and to reduce every expression to geometrical truth and exactness would be the most contrary to the laws of criticism. It, acha, because it would produce a work which, by universal experience, has been found the dullest and disagreeable. Here, David Hume is of the view that, now see, that if you want to judge the poetry on the criteria of the scientific instruments or with the help of scientific instruments, that it will entirely lose its uh, charm and will become dull, and people will certainly not agree upon it. This is the thing over here. So he is of the view that to judge the things or to judge the work of art, we require certain type of rules and regulations. When critics or literary figures wants to check or test poetry, then certainly they will pay their attention only to the diction of the poetry and the appeal of the poetry, that either the poetry is going to appeal the emotions and feelings of the people or not. As far as the scientific instruments are concerned, or geometrical truth is concerned, then it is not proper instrument to check poetic work of the artist. But the poetry does not have to accord with scientific fact. So poetry will certainly not means in agreement with the scientific invention or a scientific work. Easy example of the same to understand it is that, for example, Mother's love. Mother's love cannot be measured with the help of any scale throughout the world. As far as the geometry and science is concerned, as scientific instruments are concerned, they are used to measure the things, right? If you, if I ask you a question that how much love do you, how much do you love to your mother, then you will certainly laugh at me, right? So this is the case of poetry. It must be confined by rules of art. It means that if you want to judge poetry, then you require the rules of art to judge it, right? These rules are general observations concerning what has been universally found to please in all countries and in all ages. So, the simple rules to judge any poetry is that either it may appeal the emotions and feelings of the people throughout the world or not. Number one, either it is acceptable to, to the people of any corner of the globe or not. This is the question. Or this is the main reason. Discovered to the author either by genius or observation. Now, you will have to discover that means poet with the help of his poetry or with the help of his work of art in the form of poetry, that either he is genius, a good observer or not. Suppose, for example, this is the digital era. In this digital era means man has touched the highest level of scientific achievement, and drone means technologies before us, and computers, mobiles, and all these things, and artificial intelligence is there that we have the scientists have means discovered or invented, sorry, such type of robots that if you give them any assignment, they may think for themselves and they may decide the special matters or important matters for you. It is called, this is not a complete definition of artificial intelligence, but it means that they have intelligence. Machines certainly have intelligence, but in spite of all that, if we put a question of corona before the world, then all the science and technologies felt before means a certain type of thing which is uh, which is which cannot be seen anywhere. Or in other words, we can say that it is invisible. Okay, so if someone keeping in view the death rate of Americans and uh, death rate of Italy or other countries, Spain, and etc., if he composes a poetry by taking subject of coronavirus and the troublesome death or horrible death of the people in such type of diseases, then it will be appreciated throughout the world. Why? Because poetry appeals to the emotions of the people, and emotions means that when we feel the things, then when such type of things are reproduced before us, either in the form of poetry or in the form of novel or any other form, then people appreciate it. So these are the David Hume is of the view that these are the standard of the test, true standard of the trust to judge the things, right? Acha. Living in the new classical age, Hume has no problem with looking back to older cultural authorities. Hume belongs to the new classical age, but he peeps into past. in ancient Greece and etc., and admires Homer as a model for all ages. Here in section number 9, he, here in paragraph number 9, he holds up the Italian Renaissance poet of Ludovico Ariosto, author of the vast epic poem Orlando Furioso. First section was produced in 1516. As an example of the second-rate writer, it means that this was second-rate writer, and his poetry certainly uh, means was not quite praiseworthy, whom we still enjoy reading. And then example of second-rate writer, but his poetry is enjoyed throughout the world. He wants to make the point: if weaker writers please us, it is because they have other merits that to conform to the rules and lead us to forgive the flaws. For example, here he is of the view that means this gentleman, this poet is certainly the second-rate writer, and his poetry's diction is quite loose and etc. And in spite of having number of faults and flaws, people appreciate his poetry. Why? Because he is going to give you something, and something that may make you please. If we take pleasure from features that criticism considers flaws, then criticism needs to change. For example, if we are of the view that only the aim or the object of criticism is to find faults from the work of art, then we should change such type of criticism. Or such type of criticism requires changes. If they are found to please, they cannot be false. It means that if you are going to get pleasure from any piece of writer, then you will skip the faults of the work. Thus, Hume asserts that the rules of composition are based upon what pleases the audience. For example, upon subjective feeling. So composition is the most important, and while composing any piece of literature, artists might have certain type of ends and objectives before him. So if the people are people are getting enjoyment or pleasure from the same the work of art, then that type of thing is the subjective type of thing for the people, and people certainly will appreciate such type of work. Paragraph number 10. Hume concludes that all general rules of art are founded only on experience and on observation of the common sentiments of human nature. Okay. Common sense and common sentiments. Sentiments means emotions and feelings. Common sense, that how do we perceive the things with the help of our senses. So all the artwork is based upon these two most important points: emotions, feelings, emotions and feelings, and the common sense. But he notes that this reference point of common human experience and feelings is unstable. But these, human experience is not stable, is not quite strong, because as we established earlier, feelings are variable. It means that feelings and emotions vary from person to person. Sometimes I may feel the things. It is possible that you may not, your feelings may not have the same. You may not have the same feeling as I have. So there's a variation. They don't always behave according to their own general principles and can be thrown out of kilter. So sometimes if you think that uh, poetry or any piece of literature does not appeal your emotions and feelings, then you may certainly throw it away, no problem. But it may be possible that it may provide pleasure to others. To get the best and most representative judgment of task, therefore, we must choose with care a proper time and place and bring the fancy to suitable situation and disposition. So now, what we should do, we should keep in our mind the proper time and place. Time and place means situation, and bring the fancy of suitable situation, and time and place and situation and etc. Now, for example, over here, let me to give you example. One of the students asked a question from professor in university when I was a student, that, for example, Hazrat Shabdat Bitai's poetry certainly is means the true representation of the age, and certainly it appeals to human emotions and feelings and etc. But in spite of going through the poetry, why don't we feel change in the behaviors of the people? And suppose I want to write, I want to compose poetry like Shavlati Bhitai, and after going through his Shaj or Risalo, either I may be able to do that, do it. The professor replied, never. Number one, there are certain type of things. If you want to understand Hazrat Shavlati Bhittai's poetry, then you will have to absorb yourself in such type of time, place, and the situation in which it was composed. Number one. And then you will be able to come out from the deep ocean of imagination, and then will be able to understand the poetry, and afterwards you will have the great effect of the means poetry upon your behaviors. But if you go through superficially of the things only for the sake of means entertainment, and for the sake in order to for the sake of popularity, in order to get the means great tribute from the people, and may recite only the poetry of Shablat Pitai, then you will not be able to internalize it. So same is the thing over here. The same thing we find over here. They do not always behave according to their own general principles and cannot be thrown out of kilter, right? To get the best and most representative judgment of test, therefore, we must choose with care a proper time and place and thing, the fancy to a suitable situation and disposition, a perfect tranquility of mind, a recollection of thought, a due attention to the subject. If any of these circumstances be inadequate, our experience will be mistaken, and we shall be unable to judge of the broad and universal beauty. So these are the rules. These are the most important points which David Hume has shared with us in order to understand poetry. Number one, point number one, proper place and time. Point number two, situation in which it was composed. Point number three, tranquility of mind. Tranquility of mind means coolness of mind. When you find yourself free from all type of worries, and you may focus your concentration to one thing, recollection of thought. Recollection of thought means you will go back into the period of time in which it was written. Okay, or in other words, or easy words, we can say that you will have to travel in the past. For example, if the poetry belongs to present time, then you will take yourself uh, with the help of thinking in same situation in which it was, or from which it sprang up. A due attention to the object, and then you will have to give due attention to the poetry. Object over here is the work of art that is before you. If any of these circumstances be inadequate, if you don't follow any one of the points, then your experiment will be mistaken. You will not be able to properly judge or maintain the standard of test, and we shall be unable to judge of the broad and universal beauty, and then we will not be able to appreciate the work of art and may enjoy a broad and universal beauty of poetry. High standards of the critical judgment depends upon concentrating upon the object. Now see, the standard of judgment means depends upon your focus of attention on the object. In the right state of mind, you must be positive one. Now what happens that I think that what is her name? Her name is Salita. Okay. As Salita means informed me in the last lecture when I invited all of you to ask me question, then she brought entirely new thing before all of us, and that was that one of the Christian God always go through the glorious verses of Holy Quran, and then she may come up with a new knowledge, and she is very much moved or excited or from the means words of Almighty Allah, and then she tries to follow them. Okay, and at that moment I mentioned more and more points to her knowledge that no, see, it's up to us. It is up to our inner self. Suppose if we are going to, if sorry, if we intend, or if we wish to learn from means the material, that we will certainly focus our attention towards the learning. On the other hand, if we want to pick faults and follies from the work, then our attention would be over there, the faults and follies. And the best example is that we human beings are very much wonderful type of creature. We always keep an eye on the mistakes, errors, or and the bad behaviors of the people, and we always discuss their faults and follies with others, right? But is there any man over here in the world who simply possesses all the faults and follies, mistakes, errors, and etc., and without possessing or without having good things in his character? Example number two. If you feel fly, always sit on the wound in the human in the human body. The rest of the human body is very neat and clean except that wound. So fly always sit on the wound or the injury. Why? Fly itself is a bad thing. So that's why it prefers to have the bad things as well. Otherwise, whole the human body is very much neat and clean. So we have learned a lesson that it is not essential that means people have faults and follies and errors and mistakes and etc. And we may always put our glance on their faults and follies and irrespect means accept their good deeds or good behaviors or good things or best things of their characters. So here we should we should we should try our level best to focus our attention to good things and in learning, in spite of moving forward to the faults and follies of others. So same, I think that this point is related to the point over here, related to the criticism, related to the judgment of any work of art. The rules we have seen are based upon the relation with nature has placed between the form and sentiment. Okay. Now see, there's a relationship between form and sentiment. For example, if a form is rose, the sentiments are emotions. And the fragrance certainly attracts our attention. So we get the form, we get flower, and its image are the flower is very much, a rose is very much attractive. It attracts our means senses, and we also means get fragrance from it. And what is in the innate nature of man, innate innate nature of man is to appreciate beauty, fragrance, and form of the flower. When we appreciate the things, then in one way or other, knowingly or unknowingly, intentionally or unintentionally, we are moving toward, or sorry, we appreciate the creator. So there's a natural relationship between relationship between the image or the form and sentiment. We find its influence. We find its influence from the durable admiration which attends those works that have survived all the whims of mode and fashion. It is from proven masterworks that we may find the rule of standard of test. And in this way, we have we have found the rules for a standard of test. So these are the rules of a standard of the test, that how to judge work of art. Paragraph number 11. We are still no closer to what the rules actually are. We don't know the actual rules. Given that we need to iron out in the instability of human beings. So what we do, we put away, we throw away instability that lies in human feelings. Hume thinks the best way to identify them is to examine works that have been tired, ran. Okay, so here I have again got notice that time is up. So let me to complete this one. Hume thinks the best way to identify them to examine works that have been tried and tested over a long period of time. And he points out. So we should pay attention to the classical works of the poets of highest caliber. For example, Homer is there. Okay, his poetry didn't only please the people of Athens and Rome some 2000 years ago, but his poetry is still admired. I means at Paris and at London till today. So now let me to stop here, and inshallah ta'ala tomorrow I'll provide you a chance to ask me questions. And because of time and this programs, I think that we are facing certain problems. So, inshallah, Tala, we'll continue the same tomorrow, and we will try our level best to conclude it. So, whatever I have told you today, I'm sure that you might have got certain glimpses of the standard of test. And I'll send you these papers, and when you go through the same, you will also have the clear ideas about the standard of test. So, thank you very much for today.